Are you lost in the chaos of course structure? Or are you looking for a strategy to save you time as you design or redesign your course? In this video, we're going to dive into mapping out your course as a strategy for taming the chaos so you and your clients can be successful. I'm Dr. Catrina Mitchum, and I have been designing courses for adults online since 2009. So maybe you have a course that clients just aren't finishing, or it just doesn't flow, or maybe you're starting from scratch and this just all feels overwhelming. Regardless of where you are, course maps will save you time and energy because it gives you an overview of your course. If you need some more convincing on how course maps can save you time, check out my video from a couple weeks ago. So to create a course map, we've got two steps here. Weaving the goals together, that kind of picks up from last week's video, and then mapping it out. It really doesn't matter where you start first, but for those of you following along from last week's video, I'm going to start with weaving the goals together because that might be the bigger jump. If you already have a course and you found that you have solid goals, the mapping part might be the most useful. So go ahead and skip ahead. When I do a redesign, I find that a visual map is useful first, and then I go back and do the goals, steps, tasks, and weaving. Okay, weaving the goals together. This is building off of the steps and tasks work from last week's video if you haven't seen that one yet. The next step is to pick out the core themes among those tasks that you're having folks do. We're looking for patterns, we're looking for overlap in the types of tasks that you have them doing and the steps that they're working toward. And this is to make the process simpler. If you already have a course, you can do this by pulling in the steps you already have them going through right now so that you can take a look at where there might be that overlap or those patterns.
Okay, so I'm going to show you a bit of an example here. I have some overlapping goals and tasks. So I'm not going to show all of them just because that would be overwhelming. But I do have my first goal, which was create a course map that has a validated multiple aspects of the course idea and can be used in another round of market research, as well as building the course. And then we're skipping goal 2, which I've blocked out, and moving on to goal 3, where I've got gather and use specific feedback throughout the course creation process, requesting feedback at least twice during planning, once after creating the course, blah, blah, blah. So it's this requesting feedback twice during planning and once after creating the course map that kind of overlaps with this goal of creating the course map, right? So the course map is the planning pieces. And so as you're doing that planning for the design, you should be getting feedback. Now, some of that I have already kind of built in here. So this is the example from a previous video. So I've got ask potential clients and audience what sounds most interesting to them and what they'd pay for. Things like run it by potential clients. So areas where I've already identified they want to do the work of getting feedback. And so if I go down to my goal 3, I did note that you would repeat these steps and when they would happen. So twice during planning, I did already put that in planning. But these would then be the tasks and the steps that I can pull up into those areas that I've already identified. And so this is one way or one place where you might find there is some overlap. So I would just copy those steps and I might paste them in here. And then now I have, a way for my clients that are taking this course. I have some steps and some tasks for them to do as they are doing this asking, right? And then I would pull it down again in this spot. And that's the second place, right? And then I would do it again in, I think goal 2 was about using the course map to get some feedback. If not, I would just, add a whole other, they have a submit for feedback. And this might be from audience to, and we put that in there. And so then I have everything built into my kind of outline that's starting to take shape. Some other types of goals that, kind of find overlap. For example, I had a client who, had 2 goals. One was, saying no and having using assertive communication. And then the other goal was improving confidence and self-worth. And so those two things were very intertwined. And so after she did the steps and tasks for each one of those, she needed to go through and kind of overlay them. Sometimes the task was so close that she could make that task for both achieve both goals, and sometimes it was an every other, right? You have to identify your self-worth before you could start saying no and set boundaries and things like that. And so those are just an example of how you go through and find the themes, the things that are the same, the things where there's overlap to kind of start pulling this all into something that is more cohesive.
Now we're going to get into the actual course mapping. So you have a couple of different options. I've already mentioned visual mapping. You could also create a table, you could create a spreadsheet, you could create a list. It's just something to get you organized and have the same kind of foundational pieces throughout. The big difference between starting at goals and starting from a course that already exists is when you have a course that already exists, you're auditing what's already there. And so you're going to look at what you've got and curate it. If you're building from scratch, then you're going to build backwards from those goals. No matter what, you'll either be pulling in or generating for the same sections of the map. So, what do you need? You need to create structure, lessons, modules, weeks, pulling from the weaving of the goals activity or from the structure you already have so you can easily move it around. You need to add your tasks to the map based on that structure, and then add the content that they'll need in order to complete those tasks. You're going to add a section for why, and then you might add some other sections like accessibility, the support they need, whatever feels most useful to you and is going to help you in the next phase of either rebuilding or design or building your course. If you're designing something new, if you're going to be building something new, you can use the course map throughout the building journey and the beta test. If this is an audit, this mapping process helps you fill in any gaps, find redundancies, check the flow, and identify different paths that they might take. Sometimes opening up those options and different pathways through the material and the exercises can actually help somebody be more likely to finish.
So I'm going to show you a quick example of kind of going through those steps, right? And building things out based on the outline that we've created and the over or the weaving that we've done for our goals. So this is the document outline that I have from before, and I like visual maps personally. So I like to use Miro. I'm not an affiliate, so but this is the one I'm going to start building in. And so if I go back and forth between the goals, I see the first step is identifying a topic. And so I might look at how many steps that I have first. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 8. I've got 8 steps in this reaching this first goal. And so I might create some shapes. Feels like 8 steps might be something like 8 weeks sometimes. Sometimes I might need more than 1 week. So I'm just going to start with week 1. And then some of this is just you knowing as the experts what things are, how long things might take. And remembering to anticipate it taking longer than longer than you think, or trying to remember what it was like when you were first learning the thing. So I create week 1. Next, I'm going to, let's make it a square. Okay. I'm going to create another box. I'm going to color. I like to color code things personally. This is totally whatever your preference is. But I'm going to make 3 boxes actually. And they are going to represent the different areas. So as we're creating the structure, you want to start pulling in the lessons, the modules, the weeks. I like to think in terms of how long things will take. And then I might start to group. So I do weeks, start with weeks, and then I might start to group the weeks together into modules. It just really depends on the course. That's not something where I can I can't make any fast and dirty recommendations there. But what I need to do next is I need to add the tasks, I need to add the content, and I need to add the why, right? Those are the three pieces that are part of a core part of the course map. So I'm going to make them all different colors because I like to. Let's pick purple here, and then I'll make this orange. So I am not going to put what these are on here because I know that the cyan is going to be the tasks. The purple is going to be the content, and the orange is going to be the why. So I'm going to go back to my first step where I'm having them identify a topic. So I do have quite a few tasks in this first step. And so what I might do is actually make this weeks 1 through 3, especially because that last task is asking for feedback. And so what I would do is go and select the first task and copy it into my spot. And this isn't a Miro lesson, but in Miro, you can make things bigger, you can make things smaller. I can make this font smaller. I'm not really going to do that right now because this is just to show you structure and how you start to move from, all right, I've got these goals and I've got these things. How do I make it something that's functional for me? Um, okay. And then explain what a brain dump is and why it's helpful. That is actually going to be my content because the brain dump of ideas is the task. And then paste this here. Let's make this a white font so I can actually read it. Okay. And then I actually had made a mistake and just copied the whole thing. I copied the whole Y into the task, which I don't actually need here. So I can go back in and cut this out and paste this in the last box. So I could do this a couple of different ways. I could keep going and make each task its own box with its own content plan, or I could, let me zoom back in. I've got other stuff in this Miro board. That's why it looks a little weird. Okay, so I could do it task by task. I could put all of my tasks in the same space. I could do it. I could copy things over this way. Although if you're trying to do it like on a visual basis, I'm not sure why you would do that, but if it's helpful to you, then that's the important part. You want to make sure that you are doing something that is going to work for you. And so this is just me explaining to you what it is that what it is that works for me. So the last thing is to consider what exactly you would add in addition to this. So sometimes it might be that you would add something, about what your accessibility needs are going to be. Those tend to be around what the task is and what the um, content is going to be. So explain what a brain dump and why it's helpful. So here I might actually add in another spot, and it might be that here I put type accessibility needs, spell. And so the type might be a video, and then the accessibility needs might be taking it off caps lock and putting captions, right? If the type was something like an infographic, then it would be alt text or whatever it is you're going to need to do. So the course map can become both a map of what they're going to do and where things are going to live in sort of the process, but also it can function as a bit of a to-do list for you. And so like under this brain dump ideas, I might start to list how, right, options for brain dumping. I'm going to ask 4 questions and I'm going to tell them to pick 2 to answer. And then I'm going to have them like you can start to outline what might happen in these spaces. Just remember that this is about having something where you can come in and you can zoom in but also zoom out, right? So don't pull too much into this space, but you can start to link out to things. You can make anything a link out from your course map if it's something that needs to be expanded upon. So like I could make this brain dump ideas a link out to a Google Doc where I then create all of those options for this particular task.
So I have shown you all this in a visual map. I like to use Miro for this, but there are a lot of different programs and I will link to some in the description. But it's best to go with a format or a tool that you're already comfortable with. We don't want to throw learning a new technology in on top of kind of the brain work that goes into creating a map that has a distinct learning journey. If you need help with a course mapping, grab a strategy session. If you have a map and you want feedback, you can grab a map audit. And if you want some hand holding, jump into the Course Maker program waitlist. Links to all of those are in the description. In next week's video, we're going to work through the ways that a course map can be used to redesign a course.